They said marriage was supposed to be the happiest day of your life. But when your boss corners you in his office at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night and gives you two options, quit tomorrow or marry him tonight, happiness isn't exactly what you're feeling. Fear, confusion, anger, maybe even a dangerous spark of something you shouldn't be feeling. For a man who holds your entire future in his hands. Maya Chen thought she knew what kind of man Damien Hale was. Cold, ruthless, brilliant. She'd worked as his executive assistant for 3 years, watching him destroy competitors and build an empire without breaking a sweat. But she never imagined she'd become part of his most calculated move yet. What started as a business transaction became something neither of them could control. Desire wrapped in resentment, need disguised as hatred, and a love that neither wanted, but both desperately craved. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and become a member for early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt it was really worth listening to, click the super thanks button too. Your support makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing stories that move you. The Hale Industries building stood like a glass and steel giant in the heart of Manhattan, 60 floors of corporate power that cast long shadows over everything around it. On the 59th floor, in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city like a kingdom, Damien Hale stood with his back to his executive assistant, staring out at the glittering lights below. It was nearly midnight, but that meant nothing in his world. Time was just another resource to be managed, controlled, exploited. Maya Chen sat across from his massive mahogany desk, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from trembling, her heart beating so hard she was certain he could hear it even from across the room. She'd been his assistant for 3 years, 3 years of 14-hour days, impossible demands, and a salary that barely covered her mother's medical bills and her own student loans. 3 years of watching him move through the world like a force of nature, untouchable, unreachable, devastatingly attractive in a way that made her hate herself for noticing. He was 36, with dark hair that fell just slightly too long over his forehead, in a way that suggested he had better things to worry about than haircuts, sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they looked black in certain lights, gray suits that cost more than her monthly rent, custom-made Italian shoes, a watch that could probably pay off her student loans twice over. Everything about him screamed power, control, money. Everything about him should have repelled her. Instead, she found herself noticing the way his jaw clenched when he was thinking, the way his fingers drummed against his thigh when he was impatient, the rare moments when something almost like vulnerability flickered across his face before he locked it away. Not that it mattered. To him, she was furniture. Useful furniture, certainly. He'd told her once she was the only assistant who'd lasted more than 6 months, the only one who could anticipate his needs before he voiced them, the only one who didn't irritate him into homicidal thoughts. High praise, coming from Damien Hale. The merger changed everything. Hale Industries was absorbing Chen Technologies, no relation to Maya despite the surname coincidence, a tech company worth billions that would make Damien one of the most powerful men in the industry. But there was a catch. The founder of Chen Technologies, Robert Chen, was old-fashioned, traditional. He believed in family values, in stability, in the sanctity of marriage. And he'd made it clear that he would only finalize the merger with someone who shared those values. Someone married. Someone settled. Someone who wasn't the notorious playboy bachelor that the tabloids loved to photograph with a different woman every week. Damien had exactly 2 weeks to produce a wife or watch the deal of the decade slip through his fingers, which brought them to this moment, this impossible conversation, this offer that made Maya's head spin and her stomach clench with something that felt dangerously like hope wrapped in terror. He turned, finally, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable in that way he'd perfected over years of boardroom battles and corporate warfare. His eyes met hers, and she felt the impact like a physical touch, like electricity down her spine. "Maya," he said, his voice low and controlled, each word precisely chosen and delivered. "I'm going to be direct because that's the only way I know how to operate. I need a wife. Not permanently. Just long enough to close the Chen merger and satisfy Robert's archaic requirements. 6 months, maybe a year at most. After that, a quiet divorce, a generous settlement, and we both move on with our lives." She stared at him, certain she must have misheard, certain this was some kind of stress-induced hallucination brought on by too many late nights and not enough sleep. "I'm sorry." "What?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended, and she hated herself for it, hated the way power dynamics worked, hated that even now, even with this insane proposal hanging in the air between them, she couldn't quite manage to sound anything other than uncertain. Damien moved closer, coming around the desk to lean against it, his long legs crossed at the ankle, his posture deceptively casual. But Maya had worked for him long enough to recognize the tension in his shoulders, the barely controlled intensity in his eyes. This mattered to him. This merger wasn't just business, it was everything. "I need you to marry me," he repeated, slower this time, as if explaining a complex concept to someone who wasn't quite keeping up. It would be purely contractual, a business arrangement. You'd move into my penthouse for appearances, attend necessary social functions as my wife, maintain the illusion of a happy marriage in public. In private, you'd have your own space, your own life. I wouldn't interfere. And in exchange, I'll pay off all your mother's medical debt immediately. Every penny. Plus your student loans. Plus a salary increase of 300% for the duration of our arrangement. Plus a severance package when it ends that would set you up comfortably for life." Her breath caught in her throat. The numbers he was throwing around were staggering, life-changing, impossible to ignore. Her mother's cancer treatments had drained every resource the family had. The experimental therapy she needed, the one that might actually save her life, cost more than Maya could earn in 5 years, and he was offering to pay it all, just like that, like it was nothing. But marriage to Damien Hale, living with him, pretending to be his wife. The idea made her skin flush hot and cold simultaneously. She stood up abruptly, needing to move, needing to think. "Mr. Hale," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady, professional. You can't seriously expect me to just—" She trailed off, her brain struggling to form coherent thoughts. He watched her pace, his expression giving nothing away. "I'm not asking you to fall in love with me, Maya. I'm offering you a business proposition, one that benefits both of us substantially. You need money. I need a wife. It's a simple exchange." "Nothing about this is simple," she shot back, and there was an edge to her voice now, anger cutting through the shock. "You're talking about marriage like it's just another contract to sign, like it doesn't mean anything." "To me, it doesn't," he said bluntly, and something in his tone made her stop pacing, made her turn to look at him. His face was hard, closed off, but there was something in his eyes, something old and wounded that he couldn't quite hide. "I don't believe in love, Maya. I don't believe in happily ever after. I believe in contracts, in clear terms, in mutual benefit. Marriage is just another form of partnership, and I'm offering you a partnership that would change your life." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that marriage was more than a business deal, that love was real even if he'd never experienced it. But the words died in her throat, because what did she know about love anyway? Her last relationship had ended 2 years ago when her ex couldn't handle the demands of her job, her mother's illness, her constant exhaustion. She hadn't dated since, hadn't had time, hadn't had energy. And here was Damian Hale, the most attractive, most infuriating, most impossible man she'd ever met, offering her a way out of the crushing debt that was slowly destroying her family. "I need an answer by morning," he said, straightening up, and she realized he was giving her an out, giving her time to process. "But we both know you don't really have a choice, Maya. Not if you want to save your mother." It was the truth, brutal and unavoidable. She hated him for saying it out loud, hated him for being right, hated him for making this offer that she couldn't refuse no matter how much she wanted to. "Fine," she heard herself say, the word coming out sharp and angry. "Fine, I'll marry you. But this is business, Mr. Hale. Nothing but business. A ghost of something. Amusement, maybe, or satisfaction," flickered across his face. "Of course, Miss Chen, nothing but business. Call me Damian. If we're going to be married, we should probably drop the formalities." The way he said married, like it was just another item to check off a to-do list, made her want to throw something at his perfectly composed face. They got married 3 days later in a small private ceremony at City Hall. No guests, no celebration, just a judge, 2 witnesses pulled from the courthouse hallway, and a contract that bound them together for better or worse, for richer or poorer in sickness and health, till death or divorce do us part. Maya wore a simple cream dress she'd bought off the rack that morning. No veil, no flowers, no pretense that this was anything other than what it was. A transaction. Damian wore one of his usual gray suits, looking like he was about to walk into a board meeting rather than a wedding. He didn't smile when he said "I do." Neither did she. The kiss was brief, perfunctory, his lips barely brushing hers before he pulled away. But even that brief contact sent electricity skittering across her skin, made her pulse jump in a way that terrified her. She told herself it was just nerves, just the strangeness of the situation. It meant nothing. By that evening, her mother's hospital had received a wire transfer for the full amount of her treatment. By the next morning, her student loan account showed a 0 balance. Damian Hale kept his promises. She had to give him that. Moving into his penthouse felt like stepping into another world, one of stark, modern luxury that made her childhood apartment in Queens look like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides offered views of Manhattan that took her breath away. Pristine white furniture that looked too expensive to actually sit on. A kitchen with appliances she didn't know how to operate. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than her previous annual salary. Her bedroom was at the opposite end of the penthouse from his, as far apart as 2 people could be, while technically living in the same space. It was twice the size of her old apartment, with its own bathroom, walk-in closet, and a bed so large and soft she felt like she was floating when she lay down on it that first night. The door had a lock. He'd made a point of showing her that. "Your space," he'd said. "I won't enter without permission." Even on that first night, their official wedding night, he didn't try. He disappeared into his own room, and she heard nothing from him until morning when she found him already, dressed for work in the kitchen, drinking black coffee, and reading something on his tablet. "Ready?" he asked without looking up. "The merger announcement is today. We need to present as a happily married couple." She nodded, throat tight, and followed him down to the waiting car. The first month of their marriage was a masterclass in maintaining appearances. In public, Damian transformed. He held her hand, his fingers warm and strong around hers. He put his arm around her waist at charity galas, his touch burning through the fabric of her expensive new dresses. He called her darling and sweetheart in that smooth, confident voice that made other women look at her with envy and made her stomach flip despite her best efforts to remain unaffected. He was a perfect actor, playing the role of devoted husband with the same intensity he brought to every business deal. But the moment they were alone, the moment the penthouse door closed behind them, he became distant again, cold, unreachable. He worked late every night, often not coming home until after midnight. When he was home, he stayed in his office or his bedroom. They barely spoke beyond logistics. Dinner meetings here, charity event there, smile and nod, and don't contradict me in public. Sometimes she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something dark and hungry that made her breath catch and her skin flush. But before she could process it, before she could understand what it meant, he'd look away, his face closing off into that familiar mask of indifference. The merger went through flawlessly. Robert Chen was charmed by their apparent devotion, by the way Damien looked at his new wife, by the gentle way he touched her arm during negotiations. What Robert didn't see was the way Damien pulled away the moment they were in private, the way he made it clear through 1,000 tiny actions that this was still just business, nothing more. Maya told herself she was fine with that, told herself she didn't care that every public touch was calculated, that every sweet word was scripted, told herself she wasn't falling for a man who treated her like a convenient prop in his carefully orchestrated life. She told herself a lot of lies in those first few months. The problem was, she'd always been a terrible liar. It started small, the realization that she was in trouble, the way her heart jumped when she heard his key in the lock at night, the way she found herself staying up late, pretending to read in the living room just so she might see him for a few minutes, the way she memorized his schedule, learned his preferences, noticed things about him that had nothing to do with work, how he rubbed the back of his neck when he was tired, how he took his coffee with 2 sugars, despite telling everyone he drank it black, how sometimes, late at night, she'd hear him playing piano in the music room he thought she didn't know about, his fingers creating melodies so beautiful and sad they made her chest ache. 4 months into their marriage, everything changed. It was supposed to be a simple charity gala, one of dozens they'd attended together. Maya wore a midnight blue dress that Damien's stylist had picked out, something elegant and expensive that made her feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. She was standing by the bar, waiting for their drinks, when she heard the voice behind her. "So you're the latest Mrs. Hale. How absolutely precious." Maya turned to find a woman who could only be described as devastatingly beautiful. Tall, blonde, with the kind of bone structure that graced magazine covers, and the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of having everything you wanted handed to you. Her green eyes assessed Maya with the cold precision of a predator evaluating prey, and her red lips curved into a smile that held no warmth whatsoever. "I'm sorry. Have we met?" Maya asked, keeping her voice polite despite the unease crawling up her spine. "Isabel Whitmore," the woman said, extending a perfectly manicured hand that Maya shook automatically. "Damien's ex-fiancé. I'm sure he's mentioned me." He hadn't. Not once. Maya's stomach dropped as Isabel's smile widened, clearly reading the surprise on her face. "Oh my, he hasn't told you about me. How typical. Damien always was good at compartmentalizing. I suppose that's how he can marry his assistant for a business deal and pretend it's true love." The blood drained from Maya's face. "How do you?" she started, but Isabel cut her off with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Please, everyone knows this is a sham marriage. Poor Robert Chen is probably the only person in New York who actually believes you two are in love. The merger's done now, isn't it? So I imagine the divorce papers will be filed soon." "Unless," Isabel leaned in closer, her perfume cloying and expensive, "you've actually been foolish enough to develop real feelings for him. In which case, darling, you have my deepest sympathies. Damien Hale doesn't have a heart. I should know. I spent 3 years trying to find it." Maya felt like she'd been slapped, the truth of Isabel's words cutting deeper than they should have. Before she could respond, a familiar hand settled on her lower back, and Damien's voice, cold as winter frost, filled the space between them. "Isabel, I didn't realize they'd let you back in after last year's incident. What was it again?" "Oh yes, the unfortunate misunderstanding about whose husband you tried to leave with." Isabel's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. "Always so charming, Damien. Your wife and I were just getting acquainted. I was telling her about our history." "Ancient history," Damien said, his hand tightening almost imperceptibly on Maya's back. "Not worth discussing. Now, if you'll excuse us." He guided Maya away with the same smooth control he applied to everything in his life, but she could feel the tension radiating through his body, could sense the anger he was barely containing. They made it through the rest of the evening in silence, his hand never leaving her back, his face a mask of polite indifference. But Maya felt like she was drowning, Isabel's words echoing in her head. "Everyone knows this is a sham marriage. You've been foolish enough to develop real feelings for him." The worst part was that Isabel was right. Maya had been foolish. She'd let herself care, let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, the way Damien looked at her sometimes meant something more than practiced performance. The car ride home was silent, the city lights blurring past the windows. Maya stared out at them, her throat tight, her chest aching with emotions she didn't want to name. When they finally reached the penthouse, when the elevator doors closed behind them, and they were alone in the space that had never quite felt like home, Damien finally spoke. "I'm sorry about Isabel. He paused, clearly searching for words. "She's bitter about how things ended between us. I should have warned you she might try something like that." Maya turned to face him, and something in her snapped. All the careful control she'd maintained for 4 months, all the pretending, all the swallowing down of feelings she shouldn't have, it all broke apart. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Is everyone talking about us? Do they all know this is fake?" Damien's jaw tightened. "Does it matter what people think? We're fulfilling our end of the agreement. That's all that matters." "That's not an answer," Maya pressed, and she was angry now, properly angry for the first time since this whole arrangement began. "That's deflection. That's what you do when you don't want to deal with actual human emotions. Just answer the question, Damien. Do people know?" He was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "Some people suspect," he said finally. "Business circles are small. People talk. I can't control what they speculate about." "Can you control what you feel?" The question came out before Maya could stop it, raw and desperate, and far too revealing. "Can you just turn it off? Whatever you felt for Isabel, whatever you might feel for anyone? Or is that just another thing you've mastered? How to feel nothing at all?" Something flashed across Damien's face, something that looked almost like pain before he locked it away. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't I?" Maya stepped closer, past caring about boundaries or professional distance, or any of the careful rules they'd established. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're so terrified of actually feeling something that you've built walls so high nobody could possibly climb them. And I've been stupid enough to try, haven't I? I've been standing here for 4 months, watching you pretend we're something we're not in public, and pretend we're nothing at all in private. And somewhere along the way, I forgot it was supposed to be. Pretending." The silence that followed was suffocating. Damien stared at her, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths, his hands clenched at his sides. "Maya," he said, and there was a warning in his tone. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't tell you the truth. Don't admit that I've been idiotic enough to develop actual feelings for my fake husband. Don't ruin your perfect little arrangement by introducing messy human emotions into it." She laughed, but the sound came out bitter. "Well, sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not as good at compartmentalizing as you are. I can't just turn it off." Damien took a step toward her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "You need to stop talking," he said, his voice rough. "Why?" Maya challenged, even though her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Afraid I might say something that makes this real? Afraid you might have to actually deal with what's happening between us instead of pretending it doesn't exist." "I said stop," Damien repeated, and he was close now. So close she could smell his cologne, could see the pulse jumping in his throat, could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Make me," Maya whispered, and she knew she was playing with fire, knew she was crossing every line they'd drawn, but she didn't care anymore. She was tired of being careful, tired of pretending she didn't want him in ways that had nothing to do with their contract. For a moment, just a moment, she thought he might actually kiss her. His eyes dropped to her lips, his hand lifted as if to touch her face, and the tension between them was so thick she could barely breathe. But then he stepped back, his face shuddering closed, his wall slamming back into place with almost audible force. "This was a mistake," he said, his voice completely flat now, empty of all emotion. Letting this become personal was never part of the plan. "We need to maintain boundaries, Maya. That's what makes this work." And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into his bedroom and leaving her standing alone in the living room, her heart shattered into pieces she didn't know how to put back together. The next morning, she woke to find an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a check for an amount that made her dizzy, along with a handwritten note in Damien's precise script, as compensation for any discomfort last night may have caused. "Our arrangement continues unchanged. Damien." She stared at the check, at the note, and felt something inside her die. He'd reduced her confession to a transaction, compensated her for her feelings, like they were just another expense to be managed. Professional to the last. The worst part was that she couldn't even quit. Her mother's treatment was ongoing. The experimental therapy was working, but required months more of care. She was trapped in this beautiful penthouse with a man she loved, who saw her as nothing more than a convenient business arrangement. The next few weeks were torture. Damien became even more distant, if that was possible. He started traveling more, attending conferences and meetings that took him out of the city for days at a time. When he was home, he avoided her completely. They still had to maintain appearances for certain events, but even those became rare. The merger was complete. Robert Chen was satisfied. The necessity of their marriage was fading, and they both knew it. Maya threw herself into work, taking on projects that kept her busy, kept her mind occupied, kept her from thinking about the way Damien's touch felt during those brief public moments when he still had to play the devoted husband. But late at night, alone in her vast bedroom with its view of the glittering city, she couldn't escape the truth. She'd fallen in love with a man who was incapable of loving her back. 6 months into their marriage, Isabel struck again. Maya was leaving the office late one evening when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. The text message was simple, just a link to a gossip website. But when she clicked it, her world tilted sideways. The headline screamed across her screen. "Hail marriage a sham. Sources say CEO's wife." Just an employee playing a role. Below it were photos, her and Damien at various events, their body language analyzed by so-called experts. Screenshots of her employment records showing she'd been his assistant. Quotes from anonymous sources, people who claimed to have inside knowledge of their arrangement. And there, near the bottom, a photo of Damien leaving a hotel late at night, and a quote from someone identified only as a friend of the family suggesting that he'd never been faithful, that the marriage was a business deal from the start, that Maya Chen was nothing but a gold digger who'd manipulated her way into his life. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped her phone. Everything they'd worked to build, the careful facade they'd maintained, it was crumbling. And she knew, with sick certainty, that this would destroy the merger. Robert Chen would feel betrayed, deceived. The deal would fall apart. Hale Industries would suffer. And it would all be her fault for being stupid enough to fall in love. She called Damien immediately, her voice shaking as she told him what had happened. He was silent for a long moment after she finished. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Still at the office." "Stay there. I'm coming." He arrived within 20 minutes, striding through the empty office with the purposeful intensity of a man going to war. He took her phone without asking, reading through the article with an expression that grew progressively darker. When he finished, he looked up at her, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "Did you leak this?" he asked quietly. Maya felt like he'd punched her in the stomach. "What?" "No. Of course not. I would never. Why would you even think?" "Because someone did?" Damien cut her off, his voice harsh. "Someone with intimate knowledge of our arrangement. Someone who had access to your employment records. Someone who stood to gain from destroying what we built." She stared at him, realization dawning slowly. "You think I did this for money? You think I'm trying to blackmail you or something?" "I don't know what to think," he said, and there was something almost like pain in his voice beneath the anger. "I don't know what's real anymore, Maya. These past few months, the lines have gotten blurred, and I don't—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "I need to think. I need to figure out how to fix this before Robert sees it." "He's going to see it," Maya said, her voice flat. "The whole world is going to see it. That's the point. Whoever did this wants to destroy us, wants to destroy you." "Then they've succeeded," Damien said quietly. "Because I don't see a way out of this. Not without admitting the truth. And if we do that, everything falls apart. The merger, your mother's treatment, all of it." "You should have told me about Isabel," Maya said suddenly. "You should have warned me she was dangerous. This is her, isn't it? She's the one who did this." Damien's expression confirmed it even before he spoke. "Isabel's family lost a major contract when she and I ended things. She blamed me. Said I ruined her reputation. I didn't think she'd go this far." "You didn't think," Maya repeated, anger flooding through her now hot and sharp. "You never think about anyone but yourself, do you? You made me fall in love with you and then treated me like I was nothing, like my feelings were an inconvenience to be managed with a check and a note. And now everything's falling apart, and you're still more worried about your precious business deal than about me." "I never asked you to fall in love with me," Damien shot back, and his voice was cold now, the warmth she'd glimpsed moments before completely gone. "I was very clear about the terms of our arrangement. If you developed feelings, that was your choice. Don't put that on me." Something inside Maya broke completely, cleanly, like a bone snapping. "You're right," she said, and her voice was suddenly calm, distant. "You were very clear. This was always just business. So let's treat it like business. I'll issue a statement denying everything. Play the wronged wife. Do whatever you need me to do to save your merger. And then, once the dust settles, once Robert Chen is satisfied and your deal is secure, we'll get divorced quietly. I'll sign whatever NDA you want, take whatever settlement you think is fair, and we'll both move on with our lives like this never happened." Damien stared at her, something unreadable flickering across his face. "Maya," he started, but she cut him off. "Don't," she said. "Whatever you're about to say, just don't. I can't do this anymore, Damien. I can't keep pretending this doesn't hurt. So let's just get through this. Fix your problem. And then let me go. Please. Just let me go. The press conference was scheduled for the next morning. Damien's PR team worked through the night, crafting a statement, preparing responses, controlling the narrative as much as possible. Maya wore a pale pink dress, looking the part of the devoted, wronged wife. She sat next to Damien at a long table in front of dozens of cameras and reporters, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully composed into an expression of hurt dignity. Damien was brilliant, as he always was. He spoke with controlled passion about their love story, about how they'd fallen for each other gradually, about how, yes, she'd been his assistant first, but that didn't make their feelings any less real. He held her hand through the entire thing, his thumb stroking circles on her palm that she knew were for the cameras, but that still made her heart clench painfully. He answered every question with the perfect mix of professional courtesy and personal emotion. And when a reporter asked directly if their marriage was a business arrangement, he looked straight into the camera and said, "My wife is the most important person in my life. What we have is real. And I won't let anyone, not jealous exes, not gossip websites, not anyone, tear down what we've built together." It was a masterful performance. Maya almost believed it herself. Almost. The press conference did its job. The gossip died down. Robert Chen issued a statement of support. The merger stayed intact. And 3 days later, Maya moved out of the penthouse. She didn't tell Damien she was leaving. She packed her things while he was at work, left her keys on the kitchen counter along with a note. "Thank you for everything. I'll be in touch about the divorce proceedings." Maya. She went back to her mother's place in Queens, back to the small apartment that smelled like medicine and hope, back to the life she'd left behind 6 months ago. Her mother was doing better, the treatment working, the cancer in remission. At least something good had come from this nightmare. At least she'd saved the person she loved most, even if she'd lost herself in the process. Damien called 17 times that first night. She didn't answer. He texted, "Where are you? We need to talk. Please come home." She didn't respond. What was there to say? She'd fulfilled her end of their agreement. The merger was secure. Her mother was healthy. It was over. After a week, the calls stopped. After 2 weeks, she received divorce papers from his lawyer. The settlement was beyond generous. Enough money to ensure she'd never have to worry about her mother's care again. Enough to start over completely. All she had to do was sign. She stared at the papers for a long time, pen in hand, trying to make herself do it. Trying to make herself end this chapter of her life cleanly, finally. But every time she touched pen to paper, she remembered the way Damien had looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching. The way his voice softened when he said her name. The way he'd played piano late at night, creating beauty in the darkness. The way she'd caught him standing in the doorway of her room once, just watching her sleep with an expression of such longing it had stolen her breath. Maybe she'd imagined it all. Maybe she'd seen what she wanted to see. Maybe Damien Hale really was exactly what he'd always claimed to be. A man incapable of love, interested only in business, treating every relationship like a transaction to be managed. But if that was true, why did the thought of signing these papers feel like dying? 3 weeks after she'd left, Maya was working at a coffee shop near her mother's apartment, trying to establish some kind of normal routine, when the door chimed and Damien Hale walked in. He looked terrible. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, his hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept in days. He scanned the small space until his eyes found her, and the look on his face was so raw, so completely unguarded, that Maya forgot how to breathe. He walked over to her table and sat down without asking, without waiting for permission, his dark eyes fixed on hers, with an intensity that made her want to run and stay in equal measure. "You didn't sign the papers," he said. It wasn't a question. Maya lifted her chin. "Not yet. I'm still reading through them, making sure everything's in order." "Liar," Damien said softly. "You're a terrible liar, Maya. You always have been. That's one of the things He stopped, swallowed hard. "One of the things I admire about you." "Admire," Maya repeated, her voice flat. "How professional of you." "I didn't come here to fight," Damien said, and he looked exhausted, defeated in a way she'd never seen him before. "I came here to tell you the truth you should have told me 6 months ago. The truth about Isabel, about your complete inability to feel anything resembling human emotion. The truth about using me as a convenient prop in your business deal." Maya's voice was rising, anger and hurt tangling together in her chest. "What possible truth could you have left to tell me?" "That I'm in love with you," Damien said quietly, and the world stopped. Maya stared at him, certain she'd misheard, certain this was some kind of trick or delusion or stress-induced hallucination. "What?" "I'm in love with you," he repeated, louder this time, and there was something desperate in his voice, something pleading that she'd never heard from him before. "I've been in love with you for months, maybe from the beginning. Maybe from that first night when you looked at me with such defiance and agreed to marry me even though you hated the idea. Maybe even before that, all those years of you working for me, anticipating my needs, seeing through my walls in a way nobody else ever had. I don't know when it started. I just know that I can't remember what it felt like not to love you." "You can't," Maya started, but her voice cracked and she couldn't finish the sentence. "Can't what?" "Can't love you." Damien leaned forward, his hands on the table between them like he wanted to reach for her, but didn't dare. "You're right. I can't. I tried so hard, Maya. I tried to keep it business, tried to maintain distance, tried to convince myself that what I felt was just physical attraction or convenience or anything other than what it actually was. But I can't. I can't stop loving you, and I can't keep pretending anymore." "You left me," Maya said, and there were tears running down her face now, hot and angry. "You looked at me like I was nothing. You gave me a check like my feelings could be bought. You never once, not once, gave me any reason to think you cared about me as anything more than a useful employee." "I know," Damien said, and his voice broke on the words. "I know I did. I was terrified, Maya. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, protecting myself, making sure nobody could ever hurt me the way my mother hurt my father when she left. I watched him fall apart, watched him become a shell of a man, destroyed by loving someone who didn't love him back. And I swore I would never let that happen to me. I would never give anyone that kind of power over me. And then you walked into my life and dismantled every defense I'd ever built like they were nothing." Maya closed her eyes, trying to process his words, trying to understand what he was saying. "Your mother left?" He nodded slowly. "When I was 12, woke up one morning and she was just gone. Left a note saying she couldn't do it anymore, couldn't be married to my father, couldn't handle the responsibility of a child. My father spent the rest of his life trying to understand why, trying to figure out what he'd done wrong. He never recovered, never dated again. Died still in love with a woman who abandoned him without looking back." "I'm not your mother," Maya said quietly. "I know," Damien replied, "but I couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk loving you and having you leave. Couldn't risk becoming my father, destroyed by caring too much. So I pushed you away, treated you like you meant nothing because I was terrified of how much you actually meant to me. And then I lost you anyway. Became exactly what I was trying to avoid. Except worse, because you didn't leave. I drove you away." She studied his face, seeing the truth in his eyes, the vulnerability he was offering her. Part of her wanted to stay angry, to protect herself, to not give him another chance to hurt her. But a larger part of her, the part that had fallen in love with him despite all the reasons not to, wanted to reach across the table and touch his face and tell him she understood. "Why now?" she asked instead. "Why tell me this now?" "Because I can't live without you," Damien said simply. "Because the penthouse is empty without you in it. Because I hear phantom footsteps and turn around expecting to see you and you're not there. Because I sit at my piano at night and every song I play is about you. Because I've realized that I'd rather risk becoming my father, risk having my heart completely shattered, risk everything, than spend one more day without you." Maya felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling. "Tell me about Isabel." Damien nodded, as if he'd been expecting the question. "We were engaged 5 years ago. It was exactly what everyone expected. She came from the right family, had the right connections, fit perfectly into my world. But I didn't love her. I cared about her, certainly, but I didn't love her. And she knew it. Eventually, she gave me an ultimatum. Open up, let her in, become the husband she deserved, or end it. I ended it. I told her I couldn't be what she wanted, couldn't give her what she deserved. She married someone else 6 months later. Someone who could love her the way she needed to be loved. And I thought that proved I was right. Proved that I was incapable of love. That it was just something my father had, some gene I didn't inherit. And then I met you. And you're different with me, Maya said. It wasn't a question. Completely different, Damien confirmed. With you, I can't maintain distance, can't keep walls up, can't protect myself. You see through every defense I have. You challenge me. You're not impressed by my money or my power. You call me out when I'm being an ass. You make me want to be better. Make me want to deserve you. And that terrified me more than anything I've ever experienced. So you pushed me away, Maya finished. Damien nodded miserably. I pushed you away. And it's the biggest mistake I've ever made. They sat in silence for a long moment, the coffee shop bustling around them, the city continuing its rhythm beyond the windows, while their world hung suspended between past and future. I meant what I said at that press conference, Damien said finally. Every word. You're the most important person in my life. What we have is real. I should have said it to you privately first. Should have said it months ago. But I was too afraid. Too convinced that admitting it would give you the power to destroy me. Maya took a shaky breath. And now? Now, Damien said. And he did reach for her hand then, his fingers wrapping around hers with desperate gentleness. Now I'm giving you that power anyway, telling you that you could destroy me with a word, that I love you so completely, so entirely, that if you tell me to leave right now, if you tell me it's too late and you can't forgive me, it will break something in me that I don't think will ever heal. But I'm willing to risk it. I'm willing to risk everything for the chance that maybe you might still love me too. Do I? Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. Still love you? After everything? Damien's grip on her hand tightened. I don't know. I hope so. But I'll understand if you don't. I'll understand if I killed whatever you felt. If all I get is this moment, this conversation, it's more than I deserve. She studied their joined hands, his larger and calloused from his secret piano, playing, hers smaller and trembling slightly. She thought about the past 6 months, the pain, the confusion, the feeling of falling in love with someone who seemed determined not to love her back. But she also thought about the small moments, the way he'd always made sure her favorite tea was stocked in the penthouse kitchen, The way he'd learned to play her favorite songs on the piano, even though he thought she didn't know. The way he'd looked at her mother during one of their required meetings with genuine respect and kindness. The way he'd held her hand during public events like she was something precious. The way he'd called her love that one time during her mother's emergency, before catching himself and reverting to her name. "I do," she said finally. "Still love you, even though you're an idiot. Even though you put us both through hell because you were too scared to be vulnerable. Even though you bought me off with a check instead of just talking to me, I still love you. And I hate that I do, but I can't seem to stop." Damien's eyes closed briefly, relief washing over his features so visibly she could see the tension draining from his shoulders. "Thank you," he breathed. "Thank you." But Maya held up her free hand. "I'm not done. If we do this, if we try again, things have to be different. Really different. No more walls. No more pushing me away when things get difficult. No more treating what we have like a business transaction. I need real communication, real honesty, real partnership. I need you to let me in, Damien. All the way in. Not just when it's convenient or safe, but especially when it's hard and scary." "I can do that," Damien said immediately. "I want to do that. I'm probably going to be terrible at it at first. I've spent so long keeping people at a distance that letting someone close is going to take practice. But I'll try. I swear to you, I'll try every single day. And if I mess up, if I start retreating back into old patterns, call me on it. Yell at me if you have to. Just don't give up on me. Don't leave without giving me a chance to fix it." "I need you to do something for me," Maya said. "Right now?" "Anything," Damien replied without hesitation. "Tell me about your mother. Really tell me. Not just the facts, but how it made you feel, how it shaped you, why you're so afraid. Because if we're going to do this, if we're going to build something real, I need to understand all of you. Not just the successful CEO everyone sees, but the hurt 12-year-old boy who watched his mother walk away." So Damien told her. Right there in that coffee shop, over cooling cups of coffee neither of them touched, he opened up in a way he'd never done with anyone. He told her about waking up that morning and finding his mother's note on the kitchen table. About his father's immediate collapse, the way a strong man had crumbled into grief so profound, it never really left him. About young Damien trying to be good enough, trying to be perfect enough that his mother might come back. About realizing eventually that she wasn't coming back, that nothing he did would change that sometimes people just left, and there was no explanation that would ever make sense. He told her about building his first company at 22, driven by a desperate need to prove he was worth something, to create success so undeniable that nobody could ever abandon him again. About his engagement to Isabel, about knowing even then that he was using her as a shield against real feeling, that he was being unfair to her by offering only half of himself. About the string of meaningless relationships before and after, women who wanted his money or his status, but never truly wanted him. About the loneliness that had become so familiar, he'd stopped noticing it, stopped believing there was any alternative. About meeting Maya, about her quiet competence and sharp wit and the way she never seemed intimidated by him. About the moment during their fake wedding when she'd looked at him with such sadness and resignation, and he'd felt something crack in his chest, something he'd tried desperately to ignore. About every day of their marriage, cataloging moments he'd thought he'd hidden, admitting to feelings he'd refused to acknowledge. The way watching her read in the morning light made his heart ache. The way her laugh, rare as it was in their strained situation, felt like music. The way she'd stood up for herself in arguments, refusing to be dismissed or diminished. The way she loved her mother with such fierce devotion, it made him wish, just once, that someone might love him that way. And finally, about the night she'd confronted him, about the raw panic he'd felt when she'd admitted her feelings, about knowing in that moment that he loved her too and being absolutely terrified by it, about giving her that check, not because he was dismissing her feelings, but because he didn't know any other way to handle emotions he'd spent his entire adult life avoiding, about watching her leave the penthouse and feeling like she was taking all the light with her, leaving him in darkness he'd forgotten how devastating it could be. When he finished, there were tears on both their faces. Maya reached across the table and cupped his jaw, her thumb brushing away the moisture on his cheek. "You're not your father," she said gently, "and I'm not your mother. We're us. And maybe we're both a little broken, both a little scared, but we can be broken and scared together. We can help each other heal, if you'll let me." Damien turned his face into her palm, pressing a kiss there that felt like a promise. I'll let you all the way in, starting now." They left the coffee shop hand in hand and went back to the penthouse together. This time when they walked through the door, it felt different. Not like a showroom or a cage, but like coming home. They spent that night talking, really talking, about everything they should have discussed months ago. About his mother and her absentee father. About his fears and her insecurities. About what they wanted from life, from each other, from this unexpected second chance they'd been given. And in the early hours of the morning, when words had been exhausted and silence had become comfortable rather than tense, Damien kissed her, really kissed her. Not the perfunctory brush of lips from their wedding or the performative touches at public events, but a real kiss that tasted like salt from tears and coffee from hours earlier and promise for everything still to come. It was soft and desperate and searching all at once, his hands tangling in her hair, her fingers clutching at his shirt, both of them trying to communicate through touch what words couldn't quite capture. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I should have said it months ago. Should have said it every day. But I'm saying it now, and I'll keep saying it until you believe it. I love you, Maya Chen. I love you so much it terrifies me." "I believe you," Maya whispered back. "And I love you too. Even though you're complicated and frustrating and sometimes infuriating. I love you." They rebuilt their marriage slowly, carefully, with intention this time. Damien went to therapy, working through decades of abandonment issues and emotional walls. Maya did too, addressing her own fears about being valued only for what she could provide rather than who she was. They learned to fight properly, to disagree without shutting down or running away. They established new patterns, new rituals that were theirs alone and had nothing to do with business or appearances. Morning coffee together before work, real conversations instead of logistics. Dinner at home more often than not, cooking together, even though neither of them was particularly skilled. Sunday mornings in bed, just talking or reading or existing in comfortable silence. The piano playing that was no longer secret. Maya sitting beside him on the bench while he played, learning the melodies that spoke what his words sometimes still couldn't. They renewed their vows 6 months later, but this time it was real. A small ceremony in the penthouse with just close family and friends who actually mattered. Maya's mother, healthy and radiant, crying happy tears. Damien's business partners who'd become genuine friends. No strangers, no performance, no pretending. Just two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and chosen each other every day since. Maya wore the same cream dress from their first wedding, and Damien wore the same gray suit, but everything else was different. The way he looked at her as she walked toward him, like she was the only person in the world. The way his voice shook when he said his vows, real ones this time, promises that came from his heart instead of a contract. The way she cried when he told her in front of everyone that she'd saved him from himself, that she'd taught him how to feel, how to love, how to be truly alive. The way they kissed when the minister pronounced them married, not for show, but because they couldn't not kiss, couldn't contain the joy and love and relief of finally getting it right. Life wasn't perfect after that. They still fought sometimes, still struggled with old patterns trying to resurface. Damien still had moments when his instinct was to retreat, to wall himself off, and Maya still had moments when she doubted her worth in his life. But now they talked about it. Now they worked through it together. Now they chose each other even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. A year and a half after they'd renewed their vows, Maya discovered she was pregnant. She took 3 tests to be sure, her hands shaking as she watched the lines appear, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and excitement. She hadn't planned this. They hadn't discussed children, and she had no idea how Damien would react. She found him in his study, working late as he sometimes still did, his face illuminated by the glow of his computer screen. He looked up when she entered, and whatever he saw in her expression made him immediately stand, crossing to her with concern written all over his face. "What's wrong?" he asked, his hands coming up to frame her face. "Are you okay? Is it your mother?" "I'm pregnant," Maya blurted out, too nervous to be tactful. The words just fell out, graceless and abrupt. "We're going to have a baby." Damien froze, his eyes going wide, his hand still cupping her face. "Say that again," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm pregnant," Maya repeated, slower this time. "I know we hadn't planned. I don't even know if you want children. And I'm sorry for springing this on you, but I just found out. And I couldn't not tell you immediately. If you need time to process, or if you're not ready for this, then we can." Damien kissed her, cutting off her nervous rambling with his mouth on hers, soft and sweet and full of emotion. When he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. "We're having a baby," he said, and his voice was choked with feeling. "You're pregnant. We're going to be parents." "You're happy?" Maya asked uncertainly. "About this?" "You want this?" Damien laughed, the sound wet and joyful and completely unguarded. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. Terrified, yes. Completely unprepared, absolutely. But happy? "Maya, I'm so happy I can barely breathe. We're going to have a baby. Our baby. A family." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her with a fierce tenderness that made her own tears start falling. "I never thought I'd have this," he murmured into her hair. "Never thought I deserved this. A wife who loves me, a child on the way, an actual family. You've given me everything I didn't know I wanted, everything I was too afraid to dream about. You're going to be an amazing father," Maya said, and she meant it. She'd watched him with her younger cousins at family gatherings, seen the surprising gentleness he showed with children, the patience he extended to them that he rarely showed adults. He was going to be wonderful at this. "I hope so," Damien replied. "I want to be. I want to be everything my father was before my mother broke him. And I want to be better. I want our child to grow up knowing they're loved, knowing they're wanted, knowing that both their parents chose each other and chose them every single day." The pregnancy was both easier and harder than Maya had expected. The morning sickness was brutal, the exhaustion overwhelming, the physical changes sometimes alarming. But Damien was there for all of it. He held her hair when she was sick, rubbed her feet when they swelled, read parenting books with an intensity he usually reserved for business contracts. He came to every doctor's appointment, asked detailed questions, took notes like he was preparing for the most important meeting of his life. He talked to her belly every night, telling their unborn child about the world waiting for them, about how loved they already were. He played piano for the baby, creating new melodies, watching with wonder when Maya's stomach would move in response to the music. 7 months into her pregnancy, on a cold November night, Maya went into labor 3 weeks early. She woke Damien at 2 in the morning, her voice calm despite the pain. "It's time," she said simply. Damien was instantly alert, moving with practiced efficiency, despite the panic she could see in his eyes. He'd prepared for this moment obsessively, had a bag packed, a route to the hospital planned, backup plans for the backup plans. But now that it was actually happening, she could see him struggling to maintain composure. "Hey," Maya said softly, catching his hand as he helped her stand. "We've got this. We're going to be okay." "I know," Damien replied, but his voice shook slightly. What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not ready? What if I can't do this?" "You can," Maya assured him, "and you will. Because you love me, and you're going to love this baby. And love is what makes people brave enough to do terrifying things. Now please get me to the hospital before I have this baby in our bedroom." The drive to the hospital was a blur of contractions and breathing exercises, and Damien's hand gripping hers so tightly, she thought her bones might break. The labor itself was long and difficult. Hours of pain that seemed endless, of exhaustion that made her want to give up. But Damien never left her side. He breathed with her through contractions, whispered encouragement when she was sure she couldn't continue, held her when she cried from pain and fear and overwhelming emotion. And when finally, their daughter entered the world with a strong, healthy cry, when the doctor placed that tiny, perfect baby in Maya's arms, Damien's face transformed with such pure, overwhelming love that Maya fell in love with him all over again. "She's perfect," he breathed, reaching out with a trembling hand to touch their daughter's tiny fingers. "Maya, she's absolutely perfect." "What should we name her?" Maya asked, looking down at the small face that somehow contained both of them, the miracle they'd created together. Damien was quiet for a moment, studying his daughter with an expression of complete wonder. "Hope," he said softly. "I want to name her Hope, because that's what you gave me when you agreed to marry me that first night. Hope for something I didn't even know I was missing. Hope for a future I'd stopped believing in. Hope for love and family, and everything I'd convinced myself I didn't need. And now look at us. Look at what we made." "Hope!" Maya repeated, testing the name, feeling how right it was. "Hope Marie Hale." "Perfect. Welcome to the world, baby girl. Your daddy and I love you so much." Damien leaned down to kiss Maya's forehead, then pressed a gentle kiss to Hope's tiny head. "My girls," he murmured. "My whole world, right here in this room. I love you both more than I knew it was possible to love anything." 3 years later, the penthouse had transformed completely. Where there had once been sterile white furniture and uncomfortable art, now there were toys scattered across the floor, children's books piled on every surface, and finger paintings covering one wall that Damien had designated as Hope's art gallery. The piano room had become a family space where Damien still played, but now with Hope on his lap, her small hands trying to mimic his movements, her giggles filling the air when she made discordant sounds. Maya had started her own consulting firm, using everything she'd learned from Damien to build something that was entirely hers. He'd been her biggest supporter, offering advice when she asked, but never trying to control or manage her business. They were partners in every sense of the word now, two people who'd chosen each other despite every reason not to, who'd built something real out of what had started as a transaction. On a Saturday morning in early spring, Maya woke to find Damien's side of the bed empty. She could hear voices from the kitchen, Hope's high-pitched chatter mixing with Damien's deeper tones, and she smiled as she got up to join them. She found them making pancakes, or rather, Damien was making pancakes while Hope supervised from her high chair, directing operations with the authority of a tiny general. The kitchen was a disaster. Flour everywhere, what looked like syrup somehow on the ceiling, but both of them looked completely content. "Mama," Hope called out when she spotted Maya, "Daddy making pancakes." Not very successfully, I might add, Maya teased, surveying the mess. "Do I want to know how syrup got on the ceiling?" "Artistic expression," Damien said solemnly, but his eyes were dancing with amusement. "Hope is exploring the properties of sticky substances and gravity. Also, I may have been teaching her to flip pancakes, and one got away from us. You're cleaning this up," Maya informed him. "Both of you." "Absolutely," Damien agreed. After breakfast, he crossed to her, pulling her into his arms, and she could smell pancake batter and coffee, and the cologne he always wore. "Have I told you today that I love you?" he murmured against her hair. "It's only 7 in the morning, Maya pointed out. "You haven't had time." "Then I'm behind schedule," Damien said, pulling back to look at her. "I love you, Maya Hale. I love our life. I love our daughter. I love the chaos and the mess and the way nothing ever goes according to plan anymore. I love that you made me believe in something I was sure didn't exist. You saved me." "We saved each other," Maya corrected, standing on her toes to kiss him. "That's what partners do." They watched Hope as she squished a piece of pancake between her fingers, examining it with the intense curiosity of a toddler. She had Damien's dark eyes and Maya's smile, and she was absolutely fearless in a way that both terrified and delighted her parents. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Maya asked quietly, "when you gave me that ultimatum?" Damien nodded slowly. "All the time. I think about how differently things could have gone. What would have happened if you'd said no, if you'd chosen to quit instead of marry me? I think about how close I came to losing you before I even really had you." "Do you regret how it started?" Maya asked. "That it wasn't conventional? That we did everything backwards?" Damien considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain I caused you. I regret wasting months we could have spent being happy because I was too afraid to be vulnerable. I regret that ultimatum, forcing you into an impossible position. But do I regret that it brought us together? That it gave us this?" He gestured around the messy kitchen, at their daughter, at the life they'd built. "Never. Not for a second. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "conventional is overrated. I prefer our story. It's uniquely ours." Maya leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his arms around her. "You know what I think? I think everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. All the pain, all the mistakes, all the fear. It was all necessary to get us here, to make us appreciate what we have, to teach us how to love each other properly." "You're probably right," Damien agreed, "though I could have done with fewer mistakes on my part." "We all make mistakes," Maya said. "The important thing is learning from them, growing, choosing each other every day even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult." Hope chose that moment to throw a piece of pancake directly at Damien's head, with impressive accuracy. Both parents turned to look at her, and she grinned, clearly delighted with herself. "That's my girl," Maya said, unable to contain her laughter. "Good aim." "Traitor," Damien said, but he was laughing too, scooping Hope out of her high chair and spinning her around until she shrieked with delight. "You're both conspiring against me." "We're a team," Maya informed him. "Girls stick together." Damien settled Hope on his hip, his other arm reaching out to pull Maya close, creating a small circle of 3. "Then I'm outnumbered and outmatched." He kissed the top of Hope's head, then captured Maya's lips in a brief, sweet kiss. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Later that night, after Hope was asleep and the kitchen disaster had been managed, and they were curled up together on the couch watching the city lights, Maya thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The ultimatum that had felt like the end of her world, but had actually been the beginning of everything. The fake marriage that had become more real than anything she'd ever experienced. The walls that had come down brick by brick until two damaged people had been able to reach each other. The love that had grown in the most unlikely soil and bloomed into something beautiful and strong and absolutely unbreakable. Damien's fingers were tracing absent patterns on her arm. His body relaxed in a way it never used to be. The tension that had always seemed to define him finally released. Maya looked up at him, at the man who'd given her an impossible choice, and ended up giving her everything she'd never known she wanted. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Damien asked, looking down at her with those dark eyes that still made her heart skip. "For giving me an ultimatum that changed my life. For being brave enough to love me even when you were terrified. For becoming the man I always knew you could be underneath all those walls. For our daughter. For this life. For choosing me every day. For everything." Damien smiled, that rare, genuine smile that was reserved only for her and Hope, the smile that transformed his entire face. "I should be thanking you. You took a chance on a man who had no idea how to love, who treated you terribly, who almost lost you through his own cowardice. You forgave me when you had every reason not to. You taught me what it means to be vulnerable, to trust, to open my heart even when it's scary. You gave me a family when I thought I'd spend my life alone. You're my everything, Maya. My wife, my partner, my best friend, the mother of my child, the person who makes every day worth living. Everything good in my life started the night you said yes." They kissed then, soft and slow and full of the kind of love that only comes from choosing each other repeatedly, from working through the hard parts, from building something real and lasting and true. And as the city glittered below them, and their daughter slept peacefully down the hall, and the future stretched out before them full of promise and possibility, they both knew that this was exactly where they were meant to be. Some love stories start with love at first sight. Some start with perfect romantic moments and sweeping declarations. Theirs started with a business deal, an ultimatum, and two people who didn't know how to love each other properly. But they learned. They stumbled and fell and got back up and tried again. They hurt each other and healed each other and chose each other every single day. And in the end, that was the truest love story of all. Not the perfect beginning, but the journey they took together. Not avoiding mistakes, but learning from them. Not being flawless, but being real. Two broken people who found each other in the darkness and decided to build something beautiful out of their broken pieces. A fake marriage that became the most real thing in either of their lives. An ultimatum that led to forever. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and become a member for early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt it was really worth listening to, click the super thanks button too. Comment where you're listening from. We love knowing our stories reach you. Your support makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing stories that truly move you.